Okay, now this is the dog days of the football summer.
Yeah, it is. The time between minicamp ending, or the last day of minicamp, and the first day of players reporting for training camp is the dog days, and the dog days are longer this year than they have been in quite some time.
They are. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We also want to hit on Fletcher Cox. He talked to us for the first time since his very brief stint as a free agent. Isaac Seumalo and his role at right guard. We want to mention that a little bit later. We have some observations from OTAs on Wednesday, but let's start with a topic I don't think we've ever talked about before. Jalen Hurts. I don't think we've ever talked about it.
It's been a while actually since we did, but yeah, I think it's timely in light of. Look, I don't think you can tell a whole lot. You can tell some things from 7-on-7s, but I was really struck by Dallas Goedert's comments, and Nick kind of echoed them a little later when he was asked about Jalen. But he was really kind of effusive in his praise and really picked out specific areas that he's noticed Jalen improving in regard to throwing on time, and having more zip on the ball is another thing that he pointed out, and just being more decisive. Again, it's June, it's OTAs, it's 7-on-7. You don't want to get too carried away with it, but I think these are all encouraging signs, and signs that that Jalen Hurts has put in the work and is serious about getting better. Dallas, I asked him, I followed up on his comments, and he said, he's determined to be great. He wants to be great, and he spends every day, what can I do to be great? And at early glance, it looks like some of that work is paying off.
Yeah, we'll talk about some specific observations and what we've seen from Jalen at practice, but I think that it's a good sign, at least, that there were specific things the coaching staff recognized he needed to get better at, and Jalen worked hard on those things. And it starts with footwork and having a better base to throw from. But there are some, I think his release does look a little different, and I don't think that's by mistake. Now, it's one thing to do it in a 7-on-7 drill when you don't have pressure in your face, and it's another thing in 11-on-11s, and then it's another thing in a game when they can actually hit you. So I think the fear a lot of times is that you have these bad habits as a quarterback, you get rid of them, but then when the bullets start flying, for lack of a better term, you revert back to what you did before. And we won't know that for quite a while, honestly, but it's a good start. It really is. And the timing issue specifically, I think, will be helped out quite a bit by him being in this offense for another year.
And by having better people to throw to. I think all these things are going to make a difference. Dallas Goedert isn't going to throw that stuff around if he doesn't really see it. And I totally agree. I even felt a little uncomfortable writing about it because, I just kept writing all the caveats that, we're sitting here at the end of a 2-week OTA. Things are going to be awfully different on Sundays in a full stadium. Like you said, a live defense coming at him. But seeing the improvement now is better than not seeing it. And that's just common sense. So I really believe he wants to get better. I mean, Nick said I think it was last week, or it might have been Shane Steichen actually said, there's no time off. He doesn't take time off. He's a quarterback 365 days out of the year. And during the offseason, he's really determined to get better. I mean, Jalen Hurts could be what he was last year and play in the league for 10 years. He might bounce around from team to team. He might have a year as a starter, a year as a backup. He could have a nice long career doing what he did last year. He'd probably get a decent contract, not a huge contract, but you get a decent contract from somebody. Probably start out as a backup, maybe get a starting position. But that's not good enough for him. And I think that's admirable. I think that's something to really admire about him. Is he's pretty good. He's got areas he's got to work on, and he takes those areas very, very seriously and is really determined to do all he can. There's going to be an upper limit. We just don't know what it is, but he's doing everything he can to get better every day this offseason. And some of those, the fruits of some of that work is now being seen.
Yeah, and he's coachable by all accounts, which goes a long way. It really, the first thing you have to worry about is if you're a coach and you bring up, all right, we have to improve on your footwork, we have to improve on your release point. We have to improve on the timing. Just to have the quarterback say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I agree with you, because there are egos involved in this game. And this is a guy who's playing at a really high level. And I think a lot of players, and this isn't a knock on those players, I think it's natural to try to defend the way you've played or defend the way you do a certain thing. But him being willing to look at it and say, no, you know what? You're right. My base is too wide and it's affecting the strength in my throw, because ultimately, like, these are things that are going to help him get better. And I'm really curious to see when the pads go on, because throwing without pads is different. It just is. So I'm looking forward to training camp and seeing if he can continue this. And you're right, because we watched OTAs, but we watched a third of their practices. They practiced 6 times. We watched 2 of them. And in those 2 days, he was very good. But that doesn't mean those other 4 days we didn't see were good.
Well, we know he was 11 for 12 on Tuesday because Nick told us. Yeah. So we know he was very good at least 3 of the 6 days.
Well, I could throw 11 for 12 if it's me to you.
Yeah. But yeah, and that's all true. But I do think that there is improvement that's pretty apparent, just even watching OTAs.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think he looks better too. I think he looks physically. I think his weight's the same. I think he said his weight's exactly the same, but I think maybe it's distributed just a little differently.
Yeah, the composition, it just looks different.
Yeah.
I thought there were times last year where he looked a little bulky. And look, maybe once he puts the pads on, he'll be like, oh, he looks the same. But I don't think so. I think it looks different right now.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. You want to go through some of these observations?
Yeah, what do you got?
Yeah, and this is from the practice on Wednesday. And we'll start with Jalen Hurts, because, I mean, really the highlight of the day were his 2 deep balls. One was on a seam route to John Hightower, who beat Vontae Maddox and Anthony Harris. It was a perfect pass, hit him right in stride. And then he came back the very next play, hit a go route to Quez Watkins, who just burned James Bradbury. That one was a little wobbly, but it got there in stride, and it was fun. It was fun to watch. And it was funny because up until that point, I was like, man, a lot of checkdowns today, not a lot of airing it out. And then as soon as I said that, it was bombs away.
And Hightower and Quez, the 5th and 6th round picks 2 years ago. Hightower's an interesting guy. I mean, I think he's a real long shot to make the team, but they did draft him. They did think enough of him to bring him back. He did have 2, 50 some odd yard catches early in his career on back-to-back games, which I think hadn't been done by an Eagles rookie since 1934 or something. I remember looking that up. Although the touchdown finder actually starts in 1922, but the player game finder doesn't start till 1940, I believe. But in any case, maybe Hightower, he certainly can run. And if, I thought that was a good sign for him. It was a great throw, but I'm thinking as the ball's going toward him, he's not going to catch this, but he did. So again, we get carried away, but a guy to keep your eye on a little bit during camp.
Yeah. And both of those guys got expanded opportunities on Wednesday. No Devontae Smith, no AJ Brown, no Jalen Reagor. So some of the guys at the top of the depth chart aren't there. So you have, Hightower filling in with the ones, and he acquitted himself pretty nicely. You're right. He's a long shot to make the team, but if they keep 6 receivers, he has a shot.
Yeah.
He definitely has a shot.
Certainly.
Yeah. And the Quez Watkins ball was fun. He's just fun, straight line speed. I think we're going to see Quez outside a lot more this year.
I do too.
I mean, and even last year, I wanted to see it. I thought just his pure speed outside is a nice weapon to have. And last year, when you weren't getting much out of Reagor on the outside, I thought, we'll throw him in the slot, see if he can't do something there. I'm a little confused why they never did it, but with AJ Brown now here, there are going to be times where they want him in the slot.
Yeah, and it hamstrung the offense last year. I mean, look, you have a first-round pick in the second year. You want to get him going, and I understand that. I think they kind of waited too long to pivot, to use your favorite word. But, yeah, I mean, I think this would have been a better offense with Quez outside. And, well, it would have been a better offense with Reagor not getting 736 snaps or 734, whatever it was, and and not being on the field. But look, it hurt Jalen. It hurt Jalen because you're force feeding Jalen Hurts. That is, you're force feeding Jalen Reagor, who just couldn't make plays last year. And so you have Quez out of position. You have an outside receiver who's not helping you, and you have a young quarterback trying to make his way, find his way. And it was not a great situation. But I totally agree about Quez outside. I thought for a guy who'd never really played in the slot, I thought he acquitted himself well. And he's got that in his back pocket. We talked to him, I think, was it last week, about that. He feels like he's got more tools in the toolbox now, and he can do it. But I love the idea of A.J. Brown in the slot. I just think
and it's something he's done a lot in his career. They used him in Tennessee, and his slot snaps, the percentage kind of went up each year he was there. He can do it, and you're going to get huge mismatches. Think about this team, right? If you have a guy like Avonte Maddox as the nickel corner, Avonte is 5'9".
And he's a good nickel corner, but, I mean, if you have Devontae and Quez outside and A.J. Brown in the slot, good luck covering these guys. Yeah. And then Goedert, that's a imposing top four.
And Quez, I mean, he's a guy with 4.35 speed. It's tough to unlock all that speed inside.
Yeah, and he talked about how he learned to use his speed as a decoy.
Yeah, that was something you learned last offseason. It really helped and was just kind of disguising it.
Yeah.
Making it look like he's going 100% when he's only going 80, because then he can surprise the heck out of a DB when he does turn it on. But I just think playing the slot position, it doesn't really give you a chance to really open up all that speed. You're not running, you run a seam route here or there, but like having him on the outside on occasion and just say, hey, run real fast. And even if the ball doesn't come that way, teams will take notice, and they'll have to give him some safety help over the top, and they'll have to kind of shift that way a little bit. And then if you have A.J. Brown over the middle, I mean, they got to kind of pick their poison there.
Yeah, but I think Quez also showed last year he's not just a speed receiver. I mean, he's raw, and I know there was some plays he gave up on. There's plays he didn't look great on. There's some routes he just didn't finish. But I think he showed a good flair for some of the inside routes, and he's a strong guy. I mean, he's physically strong, and when he learned to use that speed, like where it looked like he was going to keep going and he would stop. I mean, that's a tough play for a corner.
Yeah. Last summer, he did so much work on disguising his speed, on route running, and specifically at the top of his routes. He was just so much crisper last year.
Yeah, I think they might have something in him. I mean, as a 6th-round pick, there's a reason you were drafted, 196 or whatever it was. And it's going to take some time, but what he did last year was really encouraging.
Yeah. Some other stuff on my observations. It was fun. It was our first chance to see Kelsey and Cam Jurgens on the field together, because last week when we were there, Kelsey was not. So I was really watching them work together, and even between drills when they had some downtime, it's Kelsey working with them one-on-one. That was not overstated, just how much he's really training his replacement.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. And, there'll be a point like in 7 years, I hope we're both still doing this, where Cam Jurgens will be like at the Pro Bowl talking about, recalling how much Jason Kelsey helped him at the beginning of his. To have an all-time great Hall of Famer to work with every day, even if it's just for 1 year, it's just immeasurable.
Yeah. And I think, and it's kind of fun too, because you think about offense and defense. On defense, it's like they have Jordan Davis, who's going to learn from Fletcher Cox. And then on offense, you have Cam Jurgens, who's going to learn from Jason Kelsey. I mean, if this works out, it's kind of fun. It's a fun idea to think about these two all-time Eagles greats teaching the guys who might be here for a decade, filling their roles.
And I think it's really part of the culture that has existed here for a while. I mean, you saw it with Ertz and Goedert. Heck, you saw it with Selleck and Ertz. It's really been. I've covered teams where that's not the case, and I've covered teams where, the guys have that Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers mentality. Well, I'm not a coach. I'm not here to coach anybody. I'm not here to mentor anybody. we haven't really seen that here. I think it's a really healthy thing because you're basically, I mean, for Kelsey, look, he's got the security of like, as long as he wants to play, he's going to be the center. Cam Jurgens isn't going to beat him out. But for like Fletcher, you know, I mean, if Jordan Davis proves he can, you know, I think probably Fletcher won't be here either way. But you know, if Jordan Davis excels this year, and Fletcher could have a big role in that by mentoring him, there's no way Fletcher's going to be here next year. So you got to kind of really put the good of the team ahead of your own, you know, your own ego and your own salary and your own future. And it's not easy for a lot of guys to do.
Yeah. Some depth chart stuff. The Eagles' defense in 7-on-7s was basically the same. We're still seeing Kaiser White and TJ Edwards as the top two linebackers. On occasion, Davion Taylor would mix in there at the weak side linebacker position. We even saw Kaiser White take some snaps at the mic. So I think they're really going to play around with those combinations. Last week, we saw Nakobe Dean take one snap with the first team defense. He didn't take any on Wednesday. So they're still bringing him along slowly, but I anticipate that'll probably change in training camp.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I've thought for a while that TJ Edwards was going to still have a big role, but it'll be interesting to see how and when Nakobe gets mixed in. I mean, I think we're both on the record as saying he'll play the most snaps when all is said and done among all the backers. So we'll see how that evolves.
Yeah, and I get in OTAs, he's still learning the defense, and it is kind of like a sign of respect to the veterans to put them out first with the first team. And it's not really competitive periods yet, so you get all that. But the nicest play on defense from the other day was Kaiser White covering J-Jaw in the middle of the field. He made a diving pass breakup, and Davion Taylor picked it off. It was a nice play by Kaiser because it was a tight window for Gardner Minshew to try to sneak it in there, but it was he kind of disguised it, and he made a diving pass breakup, and that's what they're going to need from Kaiser White.
Yeah, and Davion looked fast bringing that back, didn't he? He looked very athletic. It was a nice return through traffic and through the guys on the side, the guys who weren't on the field down the right sideline. But yeah, that was he's kind of the forgotten guy in this defense because you're White. But
yeah, it's funny. He was the big free agent signing, and then but
yeah, once Reddick signed, everyone forgot about Kaiser White.
Yeah.
And then once A.J. Brown signed, was acquired, everyone forgot about Hassan Reddick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see you have Davion's first name twice in a row. I want to fix that. Just looking at your story. I'm copy editing in the middle of the podcast.
Yeah. His name's Davion, too. That's how it's pronounced if we're going to nitpick here.
What did I say?
Davion. You always say Davion.
That's
and I let it go because I'm a nice guy. And then you're ripping me for a
I wasn't ripping you. I thought you might want, your story to be accurate.
Oh, it's accurate. There's nothing.
Well, yeah, you might want it to adhere to AP style.
Yeah. All right. What else we got here? Derek Barnett. It was interesting. So, 7-on-7s in recent years, we wouldn't see any of the defensive ends out there, obviously, because it's just the back seven. But since he's going to be playing that Sam role, and I'd imagine Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham at times will have to play some sort of a stand-up pass rusher type position. And Barnett was out there dropping in the coverage. And I don't think that's where he's best suited, but there are going to be times where we're going to see that this year. And that was the first inclination of that.
Yeah, and, he looked okay doing it. I mean, it's, I wouldn't want to, move him to safety, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to play that position, you've got to be ready to do it. And all those guys, I mean, we've seen BG do it, not for quite a while, but, it really, I mean, that goes back to the original Buddy Ryan's original 46 defense. We used to see Clyde Simmons drop back in coverage, when they ran 46 sometimes. So, and Clyde was, 6'6", 295, which was always interesting, but he was so athletic, he could do it. It was the first time I ever saw that.
I bet you if you ran a zone blitz, you could drop Jordan Davis. You could.
That I would love to see that.
Maybe I'll talk to Gannon about that.
Yeah.
Think he'd bite on that?
He might give you a rep of that if you ask him.
I would love to see that at camp. And Jordan Davis would probably loved it. I mean, they put him in it's different, obviously, but they used him on the goal line as a running back on occasion at Georgia.
Well, we know he's athletic.
Yeah. I'd watch that.
Yeah.
And Kyron Johnson did the same thing too. He was playing that overhang spot and he dropped in coverage.
Right.
And he got eaten up by a Kenny Gainwell stutter step.
Yeah, he did.
That was a tough responsibility in the flat with Gainwell, who actually dropped a pass.
Yeah, right. I jinxed him.
Yeah, he did. You said he had the best hands of all the running backs, and he does, but he dropped a pretty easy one.
Yeah. Yeah. He just dropped it.
Get it out of his system.
I think
now.
he was kind of looking to run before he had the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and another guy who
but he made up for it, as you wrote.
Yeah, he did. And he's smooth catching the ball. He's not going to be a problem there. The other guy who made a big play in the receiving game was Jason Huntley.
He did.
Who's kind of a forgotten guy. He's been here now a couple years. Speed, definitely a speed guy. I think he has a shot to make this team if they keep 4 running backs. He's a little redundant, I guess, because you have Gainwell, you have Boston Scott, and they do a lot of the same things, but he has a next level burst that those guys don't have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we saw it the first maybe 2 weeks of training camp last year, and he got hurt. But I mean, he was like every day he was doing something that just like a wow play that really got your attention. There's something there. Can he stay healthy? Can he do it consistently? I don't know. They certainly like him because they keep bringing him back. I think it's his 3rd year here in this program. I think he come here at the end of 2020, maybe, or during the season. But he's fun. He just makes plays. And, I would be surprised if they don't at the least keep him on the practice squad. I think they like having him around.
Yeah, and he is fun. He's the type of guy, like if training camp practice was open to fans, he'd become a real big fan favorite because
him and Britton Covey.
Yeah. And let's talk about Covey because I was watching the punt return drills. And by the way, Aaron, I love this town so much. I had a few people ask me last week if they punted it all, and I didn't see Sipas punt. On Wednesday, they actually did punt return drills, and he punted. He was all right. The first one was ugly, and then he got better after that. But they had a few guys back there returning punts. Keep in mind, Jalen Reagor was absent from this practice. So you had Greg Ward, Boston Scott, Britton Covey, Kenny Gainwell, and Quez Watkins all back there. I still think Rager's probably the most likely to be the punt returner, which is going to be unpopular, but they have a few guys now who can do it.
Yeah, they do. Covey's got to make the team. Obviously, if he's going to make the team, that's going to be how he's going to do it. Greg Ward he's going to catch the ball. He's not going to get you more than 6 yards, 7 yards, but he will catch the ball. He won't fumble it. He'll make good decisions when to field it and when to let it go. He's the safe guy. Again, he's not locked to be on the roster either. So Reagor, to me, it's just too iffy back there. He can take one to the house. We've seen that a couple years ago. But, man.
What if they return to kind of what Doug did in his last year in 2020? Have a shorthanded guy and have the home run guy.
Depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. But again, the shorthanded guy's got to be on the team. And
someone can catch a punt, right?
I guess.
I was talking to a few reporters. What percent chance would you give me off the machine, off the jugs machine when it used for a punt that I could cleanly field a punt?
How many tries would you get?
One. I'm talking one try. Maybe I get the watch one, and then I have an opportunity to catch a punt. What percentage chance do you think I field it cleanly?
So you're standing back there. You let the first one. You can kind of judge it. You can get the action of the ball.
Yeah.
I don't think it's super high.
No,
those balls are tricky.
It's tricky. I have no idea, honestly. I don't have an answer.
Around there, they take.
I'd like to think I could do it, but I'm not sure.
Did you ever play outfield in softball or baseball? Or anything?
Yeah. So my first step will be back.
Yeah, first step's got to be back. It's one thing you got to judge it right, but you also got to secure the ball. They come out of the jugs machine with all kind of wacky.
I'd probably leave there with a bruise.
Wacky action on it. It could hit you in the face. Yeah. You can have a helmet on.
I wouldn't want one.
Yeah. How about a flak jacket?
I wouldn't want that either. I don't know. I think I'd have a decent shot.
The Eagles.
It's funny though. So when we're out there, I remember being a young, like really young reporter and like kind of wanting the football to come your way. I got over that real quick because I realized there's no like there's nothing good that can come of it.
No.
You know what I mean? Like a few years ago, the ball rolled to me and there was no one else around, and the ball boy was running over to get it, but he stopped like 25 yards shy of me. I'm like, I didn't warm up today, buddy. Like, and now everyone's watching me. I got the football. Luckily, my pass made it there. But I mean, no one said good pass.
It was had a little Hackenberg to it.
but like, no one said like, oh, that was a good pass, Dave. But if I would have thrown it 10 yards short, or like would have thrown my arm out of my socket, everyone would have made a big deal of it. So there's no advantage.
I learned very early. Somebody told me this when my very first job at the Gloucester County Times. They said, never, whatever sport you're covering, whether it's basketball, baseball, little league, never pick up the ball. He said, it's the coolest thing to do. You just let it go.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know, 2 months later, I was covering a little league baseball game at Paulsboro. It was like a region district, I don't know, whatever, little league tournament game. And I had to take pictures. Like we didn't have like enough photographers, so I had to take pictures. So I'm like behind first base and a guy hits a screaming, it was a right-handed batter, hits a scream. I'm behind third base. No, I'm behind first base. Guy hits a screaming foul ball opposite field up the first base line. And I just stood there like to, just basically ignore it and let it go past me and not pick it up. And it just whacked me in the ankle.
You're supposed to not let it hit you.
I didn't know it was going to. It took a crazy bounce. I think it hit like the rubber in the bullpen, which was like along the behind first base, and smacked me. And that thing hurt, but you couldn't let on that it hurt. Everyone, are you okay? You okay? Oh yeah, fine. I didn't feel anything.
Rub some dirt on
it. Get home and just get the ice bag out. But I'd be at like a high school basketball game and the ball would bounce over during warm-ups. You just let it go.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like the ball's coming at you.
No, I just never. One other thing.
You got to style. You can't let it hit.
I don't. I just don't do that. I don't roll that way. I just let it go. I don't want to lose my focus on what I'm doing.
Yeah,
because it's not about me. I don't want the ball in my hands. I wanted to, you had another observation about some of the alums that were there, and Dick Vermeil was there. Dick introduced me to
Franklin Master.
Franklin Master, thank you. God, just drew a blank on his name. I was thinking Denver LeMaster. Who's the old relief pitcher with the Astros, I think, right? Like in the 70s. But Bob LeMaster.
How did I know that?
It was so cool meeting him. And he was one of those guys, like I'd always seen the name and I would write the name. Like he was the first linebacker to do this. And, Franklin Master was a Pro Bowler for the Eagles in 81. He started on the Super Bowl team in 80, obviously played for Vermeil, got here in 74, and was here till 82 and never missed a game. Played 9 years, never missed a game. He wasn't started till year 2, but played in every game. And what a nice guy. Lives down in Chester County now. It's just like, I just love meeting those guys because, it's not an era. I mean, I started covering the team in 87 and his last year here was 82. He played his whole career with the Eagles. So it's not like he's that much older than me, but I just appreciate those guys so much. And it's so cool to meet them. And he was in a golf cart and I was so glad Dick Vermeil introduced me to him because you see the name but just to kind of match the name that you've written all these times to the actual person. And he was really enjoying being at practice.
Eagles are pretty good at that, by the way.
They've gotten really good at it. And it's something Jeff Lurie brought back that the previous owner, I don't think I'll say the previous owner's name anymore. I'll make that my new Carson.
I don't know if that's such a...
The guy in France. We already have a nickname for him.
That's true, actually.
Guy in Indy, guy in France. He completely ignored the history of the team when he bought the team. It didn't mean anything to him. He wasn't a Philly guy. There was the Eagles Hall of Fame didn't pick any players. There were like these rusty plaques by the entrance, like behind home plate to the vet. But they never updated them. They hadn't done it in like 20 years. There was no displays at the stadium. Like you go into Head House Plaza now,
It's pretty cool.
Really impressive. And the historical stuff, and most people don't get to see it, but they have the same kind of stuff at the NovaCare complex in the entryway between the front doors and the cafeteria. There's like giant, like museum type presentations and displays about every era in Eagles football. And then they have the Pro Bowl, displays, all the players who've made a Pro Bowl. And that stuff means a lot to Jeff Lurie. And that's important to any, this franchise has been here since 1933, and there's not a lot of franchises in sports that have been in the same city with the same name for that long. It's going to be a century, like in 11 years, which is incredible. But yeah, Irving Fryer was there, who, by the way, looks like he's 59, Dave.
How many snaps do you think he could give him?
I mean, he said 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks incredible. Did you get
yeah. I couldn't believe it was him. I mean, far away.
Irv was the first pick in 84.
Okay.
It's 22, 16, 38, 22. Yeah, 59. And it looked incredible. And I think one of the writers went up to him thinking he was AJ Brown. Hey, AJ, he's ripped. He looks great. So yeah, it was cool seeing those guys, but Frank LeMaster in particular, I'd never met him before. And I don't know. I just appreciate those guys. So, I mean, he never made a lot of money. He was working those guys worked during the off season. They had jobs. And, that's one of the reasons training camp was so long back then, because they couldn't report in shape because they were working, So anyway, that's my ramble on Frank LeMaster. And I'm so glad he was there. And I'm so glad the Eagles have reconnected and, with their past and embraced such a rich history.
Yeah. And I always find it cool too, when the modern players seem to care about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't. And I get that too. I'm a 21-year-old kid. Like, what the heck do I care about Frank LeMaster? But some of them get it. And they want to learn about the players. And I think that's pretty cool too.
And Slay came over and he was talking about how he was going to cover Irv. And he's like, I could take you. I can handle you. And then I was walking off the field with Hassan Reddick, and he was like, man, this is like, they brought all the legends out. And he was like really curious about LeMaster and about Vermeil. And he said, man, the only thing missing is Harold. They should have brought Harold Carmichael. And he's a Philly guy. Obviously he knows the history, but I just thought that was a really cool thing for him to say. And Harold, I didn't see Harold there yesterday. I don't think he was there.
Probably inside.
He might have had an obligation or something, but he's really involved with all the alumni stuff.
And Jaws is always around too, by the way.
Jaws was there, yeah, and it was cool. And Vermeil was trying to drum up support for Irving Fryer's Hall of Fame candidacy, and Dick's going in this summer to the Hall of Fame, much deserved. It was really cool. I have longer conversations with those guys than with the current players, but we have more in common.
All right. No good segue here. Isaac Seumalo.
Yeah.
At right guard. He's been there now every time the 2 practices we saw. I guess we have to give the caveat that Lane Johnson hasn't been there. So Jack Driscoll's been at right tackle. Right. So theoretically one of the guys who could be competing for that job, but it doesn't sound like he's the front. I mean, it sounds like at the very least, Isaac is the front runner, and it sounds like it's his job to lose.
It sounds like that to me. I would agree with that. And, Isaac, I see the segue could have been, Isaac's going in his year 7 here.
It's hard to believe.
The segue could have been, speaking of old timers, Isaac Seumalo, this is his 7th year with the Eagles. If you cared about the quality of your segues, but no, I was impressed with his approach, because you think about it, like he was originally going to replace Kelsey as the center. That was the original plan. Obviously that's not going to happen. Cam Jurgens' replacement. He was going to be. His job was playing, left guard. He started a handful of games in the Super Bowl season, and he got benched for Wiz. But then he
got benched for Chance.
He got benched for a week for Chance Warmack. But then Wiz ended up there. But then he started on a playoff team in 18. He played the whole season in 19. Hasn't played right guard. He started 2 games in 16 at right guard, but he's really embraced it. And that impressed me because, they've moved him around. I mean, they're like, Landon's just too good at left guard. It's not your job anymore. And he's got the perfect attitude about it. He's like, wherever they put me, I'm going to do my best. And it's easy to say that, but I think that's kind of who he is. He said, I just kind of, whatever they're asking me to do, I embrace it and I attack it and I do the best I can. And that's the attitude you have to have, because, not everybody gets to play where they want to play or where they're used to playing, or, where they were drafted to play. I think he's a good player, and, I think he's a solid guy. And if you have, he said, I loved playing next to Jordan, but hey, now I play next to Lane. So it's not a bad deal.
Thing. Yeah.
And he's still playing next to Kelsey. So I was impressed with, it's like the best interview Isaac Seumalo has ever given us.
Well, he's had his moments. Well, he prefers not to do it. He's kind of a quieter guy, but he's a really smart guy. And I think when he opens up like that, we see why the coaching staff and his teammates like him so much, because he really is very intelligent. And we always heard about like him having that center mentality and bringing it to guard, and how it's always kind of like they have two centers out there, because he's able to identify, he's able to help guys get in the right position. I thought it was cool that he recognized that Landon deserves to be the left guard.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was obvious to all of us watching, but you can see a guy who plays that position, played it at a relatively high level, being like, but I should still be in that role. And positions are a big deal. I don't know how we haven't been in the locker room for so long, but they used to line up the O linemen in order. So you would have, back in the day, you'd have JP at the left tackle. You'd have Isaac next to him, Kelsey, Brandon, and Lane. They have 5 spots in that deep corner of the locker room. And it was kind of a badge of honor to no, I'm in my spot. This is my position. So
I think it goes back to Trey and Runyon.
Oh, is that they've always done that?
Yeah.
Because I know for a while they kind of shuffled the whole.
Well, Chip, when he tried to mix offense and defense in different position groups in a locker room, as a culture building exercise. I think a lot of guys would not embrace, I'm the left guard. I want my job back. And it was cool to hear him just, very genuinely say, I'm just going to, I'm blessed to be on the field. I'm blessed to be.
I'll tell you what, he's kind of at a crossroads in his career. A little bit. He's going into year 7. He's coming off a really serious injury.
2 of them.
Well, 2 surgeries.
Yeah.
1 injury.
Okay. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, the last 2 years he's been.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, he had 2 surgeries, and then 2 years.
I liked how succinctly he explained that too. Like, the 2 surgeries were planned. He's like, well, they put metal in and then they took metal out. Like, all right, I get it. But the last surgery was in February, so he's still not 100% yet. He's still in that rehab process. Hopes he's going to be full go at training camp. For his sake, I mean, he kind of needs to be, if that's going to be his spot.
Yeah, and he was asked that right at the end of his presser, which was quite long, and it's funny. We had Dave and I were in an interview this morning that was scheduled for 10 at the NovaCare complex, and it was 10:15. It was 10:30, and I didn't have my laptop. It was in the car, so we're in the media room, and I needed to transcribe the Isaac Seumalo interview. So now it's 10:45, and we get a text. We don't know when this is going to be. So I go to my car, knowing full well that I go to my car, I get my laptop, I plug it in, I set it up, I find the audio from Isaac, and I start transcribing it. Guaranteed the interview is going to start, which is exactly what happened. So I took one for the team. But anyway.
I like that you waited 45 minutes.
I know, because it was like, well, this is going to happen. But I knew if I went and got my laptop, I would make it happen. But Isaac did say that, he said he's hoping to be there for the start of training camp, which is July 26th. That's the report day. And he said, well, what do the doctors think? He's like, well, I'm hoping to be there on July 26th. So he hasn't been cleared for contact. And, I think if Sua Opeta starts training camp as the right guard number 1, he'll have a chance to win that job, I would think. I think Sue is pretty good, but I still think Isaac is your best bet at right guard if he's healthy.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, but the financial thing plays a role too, because if they're looking at it and they think Sue is just as good, he's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, he's about $6.5 million cheaper in salary, and his cap number is like $1 million.
Yeah.
Compared to Isaac's is what, 5.5?
Yeah. But then it also lowers the level of your backups.
Right. Yeah. But I think you pointed this out last week. Isaac's either going to be starting or won't be here, most likely.
Probably. Yeah. And I think he'll be starting.
I do too.
Fletcher Cox.
Yeah.
We talked to him for the first time since he was a free agent, and it was a really weird deal. You guys remember back in March, they had a deadline of 4 p.m. on March 17th, and if they didn't restructure the contract, it would have been $18 million in guaranteed money that hit the books, and they weren't going to let that happen, and they couldn't figure out a contract before then, so they had to release him. And at the time, it was really strange because they released Fletcher Cox, and we hear immediately they're still trying to get him back, but there were 2 days where he could have signed anywhere, and teams called.
Yeah, he said that yesterday. It's the first time we've talked to him since this all happened. He said, anytime you're a free agent, teams are going to call. But he said, I wanted to be here, and they wanted me here. And usually when that's the case, you can find common ground. And look, $14 million.
Yeah, it's not like he took a discount.
$14 million is a pretty nice.
He's still a top 10 paid defensive tackle in APY.
He is, and I'm not sure he's a top 10 defensive tackle. He probably is I think he's probably from 10 to 15, 11 to 15, somewhere in there. But he's still a good player. But I think it's important that he's here. And, we talked about the impact he can make on Jordan Davis. But he's a solid guy. And I think the most important thing we heard from Fletcher was just the communication he's had with Gannon. And just how
that really hit me too.
Yeah, they're on the same page. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Fletcher hates Gannon. That's not the case. I think Fletcher appreciates that Gannon listened to him. Look, this kind of thing happens all the time. Every coach is trying to figure out what players like to do, what they're best at, and they clashed on that for a little bit, but
it wasn't a good situation.
It wasn't a good situation, but I think they both handled it maturely, like men. They put their egos aside and what's best for the team. And look, having a happy, productive Fletcher Cox is best for the defense. And I give Gannon credit for being flexible. I give Fletcher credit for listening to Gannon and, not just resenting him, which he easily could have done. And I think they're in a pretty good place now.
Yeah. The fact that they're talking when they don't have to talk is a pretty good sign.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, they don't have to talk in the offseason at all.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that hit me. And then also him talking about Jordan Davis and really embracing that role of helping him learn, that'll help. I mean, Jordan Davis said it pretty well that he's coming into a defense that's pretty vet heavy. He's going to have the guys to learn from if he wants to. He's in a room with, Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett, who's been in the league a long time now, and Josh Sweat, who's been around for a while. Some of the linebackers, Kaiser White's been in the league, and then the secondary of Darius Slay and Brad. So there's a lot of guys there that he can learn from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great situation for Jordan, and not just learning, but he doesn't have to go in. I think that if you're the 13th pick in the draft, usually your team is going to count on you to play every snap. Depending on the position, 80%, 90% of the snaps, 100% of the snaps. Eagles have that luxury of bringing him along slowly because of that depth, because of those veterans, which I think is good for the defense and it's good for him because I don't think he's ready to be that guy. So it's a great situation. The Phillies have a home game. I see Ricky Bose here and Davis.
They do. They have an afternoon game.
Okay. We're going to get stuck in traffic like we did with Coldplay? My goodness.
I don't think so.
That was a nightmare. We got stuck like 25 minutes because the only way out of here when there's an event is there's this one gate, but it funnels you onto Broad Street North where you hit all the traffic coming off 95 in both directions. And it just doesn't move.
Yeah. And all the lights, they were all yellow.
Yeah. It was not a good situation.
That was a Coldplay joke.
Do you know if you go out?
You didn't get it?
No.
The Coldplay, never mind.
I don't know any Coldplay songs. Not a fan. If you go out the gate, the one gate that's open, and you back up, I did this once. You back up along that access road, and it goes under 95. You can get on the other access road that goes right to.
There are cones there.
Yeah, the cones of Dunshire are there. Do you know what the cones of Dunshire is?
You've brought this up before. It's your one pop culture reference that you have.
No, I think, yeah. Maybe my one TV series.
That's what I mean.
But yeah, you have to go past the cones and then change lanes and back up the entire length of that, and then you can go straight. But I should have done that. Should have done that last night. But
watch the tape, learn from it, get better.
yeah, I just need more reps driving backwards down that access road, right under 95.
What are we going to do? We got a long time here before training camp. Training camp starts July 26th. And we were talking about this. This is, I mean, the team's pretty much leaving town. We're recording this on June 9th. And, you know, it used to be like the mandatory minicamp used to be all the way up to like June 21st, 22nd.
It was usually about a month or a little bit more that the players would be off. Now it's a long gap. I think there's got to be a high level of trust between the coaches and the players to stay in the books, stay with your conditioning. And I think most players these days do that because there's so much at stake. Salaries are so high. Not all of them will. And we'll see the first few days of training camp.
I'm curious to see how many people fail that conditioning test coming back.
Yeah.
There were a couple last year.
Yeah, no, like most guys have a trainer, a personal trainer that they'll work with. But you got to get to training camp in shape. Training camp is no longer to get in shape. You got to be here in condition and ready to go.
Well, I don't know if these practices will get you in shape.
That's probably true too. But if you're not in shape, you'll stand out, because they do move quickly. They're not hitting, but they move quickly. They're high tempo. And if you don't put in the work over these next 6 weeks, I'm sure that was the message from Nick to the guys when, after the last practice was, you're on your own, but you got to do the work. You got to be ready to go when we get back here late July.
Yeah. As far as the podcast, we have a bunch of stuff planned throughout the summer. We're not leaving you guys. We have some vacation time coming up, but there will be podcasts. We promise that.
There'll be at least one podcast per week.
Yeah.
Through what's the phrase? Ad infinitum.
I don't know. I know what you mean, but I don't know.
Maybe we might do a podcast where Dave and I play Cones of Dunshire.
I don't want to do that.
Dave doesn't want to do that. All right.
But we have stuff planned.
We do.
So
good stuff.
Fear not.
Ben doesn't want to either.
Wanted to mention real quick before we get out of here. I am working. Well, I'm not working on it anymore. It's finished. A Nakobe Dean story dropping on Friday morning. Hope you guys enjoy that. It was a fun story to watch.
Can I just say one thing about that story?
Yeah.
I read the story and it's fabulous. And I would encourage anybody who wants to get to know Nakobe Dean to read it. Dave talked to, can I say some of the people you talked to?
Sure.
Talked to his mom at length, former coach, high school teammates, college teammates. It's really a very in-depth look at the person he is. You'll read it and feel like you really got to know Nakobe Dean. And I think it's one of the better things you've done since you've been here. So highly recommended. And
I think you'll walk away after reading it with a higher opinion of him than you already have.
Yeah. Your eyes will be sore too.
That's fair. All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click that like button and subscribe there as well. That's it. That's all we got.